10 o'clock hour. It is May 23rd, 2017, and we're now going to move into our regular agenda for the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors. We're going to take a brief moment to reflect. All right. Now, time for the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're going to ask Debbie Mayhew to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today. Debbie?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Introduction to new employees. None today, or do we have one? None. All right. Actions to report out of closed session. Council?
Yes, the board, with a motion by Supervisor Cowan, seconded by Supervisor Berkowitz, with a vote of 5-0, voted to initiate litigation. The defendants and the other particulars shall, once formally commenced, be disclosed to any person upon inquiry, unless to do so would jeopardize the agency's ability to effectuate service of process on one or more unserved parties, or that to do so would jeopardize its ability to conclude existing settlement negotiations to its advantage. Secondly, in regard to item of significant exposure, Supervisor Gitlin motioned to send a government code 54960.2B letter. The motion was not seconded. The board authorized with a vote, motion by Supervisor Hemmingson, seconded by Supervisor Cowan, Supervisor Gitlin and Berkowitz dissenting, to send a response regarding a cease and desist letter received by the board. The letter would be available for public inspection upon sending.
Thank you, Council. Okay, the chair requests any deletions, corrections, or additions from board members to the agenda at this time. In order to add an item to the agenda, the matter must have come to the attention of the county subsequent to the posting of the agenda, and the matter requires action before the regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Any items at this time, board members? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and we'll move to the consent agenda at this time. Public comment on consent agenda matters only. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for...
Move for approval of the consent agenda.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Kylie, can you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. All right, we're going to move to budget transfer items. Approve and adopt budget transfer item 05-04 in the amount of $1 million within the Road Division budget unit to pay the contractor for work performed under the hurdy-gurdy bridge replacement on Big Flat as requested by the Director of Community Development Department. Item number 13, approve and adopt transfer of 0505 in the amount of $45,000 within the Federal Title III budget to be used for the development of a rural wireline fire break along Big Flat Road to Gordon Mountain as requested by the Director of the Community Development Department. Item number 15, adopt and approve transfer 0506 in the amount of $17,000 within fiscal year 16-17 juvenile hall and probation's budget to cover home detention and medical bills as requested by the Chief Probation Officer. I'd like to have public comment on items 12 through 14, if there are public comment. Please approach the dais and state.
Hi, this is Linda Sutter, County.
Good morning.
I just had a question regarding where's this $1 million coming from? I saw some kind of sheet, but I didn't really understand it, so.
Great. Ms. Sutter, are you through with public comment, or you just have a question at this time?
I have a question regarding that.
Okay, if we address that,
Okay, then, and so hopefully it's not coming out of the mitigation funds, and if it is, you know, I'd like to see our county roads fixed other than just the hurdy-gurdy, because our roads and streets are horrible.
if you still feel
Thank you.
necessary after we get an explanation on this item, I'll allow you another 3 minutes for public comment. Okay, thank you. Ms. Constable and Ms. Barr?
Good morning.
Good morning.
The hurdy-gurdy bridge is being replaced. It's located on Big Flat Road. At your last board meeting, you approved a construction contract award for Steelhead Constructors Incorporated. The total amount of the contract was for over $3 million. The project is actually being paid for through the Highway Bridge Program, which is roughly 88.5% of the funds, and then the remaining portion is being paid through toll credits. So there will be no mitigation funds used for it. It's through other funding sources. Because the contract was awarded, we're anticipating having to pay expenses to Steelhead Constructors prior to the end of the fiscal year, up to an amount of $1 million. So we wanted to get that money transferred so we could pay the invoice in a timely manner.
Understood.
Heidi, can I ask a quick question on this 88-12 split? Tell us about the 12% funds that are coming. Explain to us a little bit. Is there any general fund contribution to this?
No,
Give us
no.
some details on this 12% money.
The 12% are toll credits,
Okay.
which
for-
Rosanna could give you a better
Okay.
description of those.
And again, this is more for public edification.
no, I
A lot of
think-
money's going through our system, and I think, Rosanna, you would be very helpful in explaining that. Thank you.
The toll credits are a pot of money put together through the tolls on like the Golden Gate Bridge and other sources. And I'm not exactly sure how they work. They're a fuzzy pot of money that's controlled by the state. And we're able to use them because we're a small agency on some projects. And one of them happens to be the Highway Bridge Program. Another one would be the Federal Lands Access Program. Basically, Caltrans tells us when we can use them, and we use them to our full advantage when we can, and we always ask, can we use toll credits? So that's about all I have on toll credits.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Rosanna. Sir, do you have any further public comment on this matter? But can you approach the dais? Thank you.
I inquired about those toll bridge credits, and I was told that we do not get money from that, and that Delnart County helped the Golden Gate Bridge with a bond years ago, and they paid the bond back, but we don't get any more credit, or we get no more money from that. So that is inaccurate, I guess, and if we're getting money, how much do we get per year from that, please? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Ms.
So with toll credits, we don't actually get an obligation of funds. They don't say, here's a certain amount of money. There's just opportunities where we're able to use them as match funds primarily. I think that's the only thing we're able to use them for.
Understood. Thank you very much. All right, further public comment at this time on budget transfers? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and bring it back to the board.
I'll make the motion to approve at this time item budget transfer item number 5-04 in the amount of $1 million within our roads division budget unit to pay the contractor to work performed on the hurdy-gurdy bridge replacement on Big Flat as requested by the Director of Community Development Department.
This is also for actions on 13 and 14.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was anyone else who had any other comments with regard to those other items. That's why I left it open for public comments. Have you closed public comments on
Right.
all matters of budget item, not just 504?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, then I'll make the motion to approve the other budget items, 0504 included, 0505, 0506, and I think that is it.
Thank you, Supervisor. Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Kylie, could you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. All right, we're going to go ahead and move into the Introduction of term limits ordinance, read into title only, waive further reading of ordinance, hear and consider public comment, set a second hearing for June 13th, 2018 at the regularly scheduled Board of Supervisors meeting as requested by County Council. Council?
Yep. So at the last meeting, the board stated that they would like to see a term limit ordinance, which was set for public hearing with the parameters of 3 terms with no set time coming back, so basically 3 terms total. So we have drafted that ordinance and attached it. That ordinance would become effective on the 2018 ballot in June, and it would be, if it were to be effective, it would be passed right away. If you have any questions about it, please let me know. We've had it for the last couple meetings, and this is basically the opportunity for the public to give
Very
its
good.
input.
Thank you, Council. I'd like to open it up for public comment at this time. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board since there is no action to take. And we just read, there is.
So we do need to do a motion to, as it stated, waive.
Okay.
Yes.
Understood.
I'll make that motion to waive further reading of the ordinance, hear and consider public comments, which we've done, set a second hearing for June 13th at our regularly scheduled supervisor meeting.
Okay, we have a motion on the table.
I'll second that.
And second, any further discussion?
I have a question, and it was kind of addressed in the packet, but they said that there wasn't a number that they can come up with. But do we have an approximate cost of what it costs to put this item on the agenda? Or, I mean, excuse me, on the ballot?
I had a brief discussion with the clerk recorder elections. It really depends in regards to how long the ballot is and whether or not it takes multiple pages. In general terms, she said it was probably, with a special election, it would be about $30,000. If it's not a special election, it was going to run around 5 or 6.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Okay, seeing none. Kylie, can you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
No.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
No. All right, on the agenda during consent, we had a resolution honoring a longtime employee to Delaware County. I'd like to read that resolution at this time. This is a resolution of the Board of Supervisors of Delaware County, State of California, honoring Debbie Mayhew, retiring Director of Child Support Services. And this is Resolution 2017-028. Whereas Debbie Mayhew will conclude her official service with Delaware County as Director of Child Support Services on June 9, 2017, after her service to Delaware County for over 19 years. Whereas Debbie entered county service full-time as an account clerk with the Department of Family Services in October 1997, continuing to promote in September 2002 to an accounting technician, and in December 2005 to a staff service analyst, and in January 2008 to Assistant Director of Child Support, and ultimately appointed to the Director of Child Support Services in December 2008. And whereas Debbie has been a valued employee during her tenure and is known for her ability to respond and attend to emergencies, and has exhibited professionalism, empathy, ethics, and steadfast dedication to children of Delaware County and her profession. And whereas Debbie has been an advocate for the children of Delaware County, playing a crucial role in making sure their needs are being taken care of, and has been known for her ability to deal with diverse and emotional issues. Now therefore be it resolved, the Delaware County Board of Supervisors hereby acknowledges the diligence and dedication Debbie has exhibited during her many years of service to the County of Delaware. Be it further resolved, the Delaware County Board of Supervisors expresses its appreciation and best wishes to Debbie and wishes her good luck in her retirement and future personal endeavors. Passed and adopted by the County Board of Supervisors of Del Norte, State of California, the 23rd of May, 2017, by unanimous vote.
Well, I didn't prepare anything formal, but thank you for the kind words. It's 20 years. Wow, where did that go? There's this young blonde sitting behind me is my youngest daughter. She was 11 years old when I first started with Department of Child Support Services, which was at the time administered by the District Attorney's Office, and this was a program that's gone through so many changes over the 20 years I've been there. Mostly, I want you to know that I have been blessed to work with some of the most dedicated county employees over the 20 years. It's easy to forget that we're there. It's a program that's not real popular, but necessary. And I would like to encourage you to make the time to go by the office and visit the staff there. It would mean a lot to them. Other than that, thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to retirement.
Thank you, Debbie. It's truly difficult in Delaware County to bring on great professionals like you that are willing to move up the chain and become director and take the heat along with the good. And I think the resolution really reflects well on the dedication and your service to Delaware County over the past 20 years, and we really appreciate it. Thank you. Those are the warm and fuzzy times, guys. Let's eat them up. All right. We're going to go ahead and move on. Well, actually, I'm going to skip that one because I don't see a representative here at this time. Let's go ahead to item number 17, which is consider miscellaneous legislative and budget matters pertinent to the County of Del Norte. Authorize the chair to sign and send appropriate letters with respect to the matters pending before the state or federal government. CAO?
Before the board today, if you'd like, we could go to the specific letters.
Absolutely.
There is a number of bills and legislation that's out there that we may be bringing back to the board for specific action. Some of those for support of our opposition. If you'd like, we can go on to 18 and 19.
I'd like to hear if there's anything that's come out of the legislative conference that either Supervisor Cowan or Supervisor Berkowitz or Supervisor Gitlin would recommend we need to consider action on for a future matter at this time.
The items that I'm concerned about were item 18 and 19.
Okay.
So if you want to handle those at this time.
Excellent.
Great.
Very good. So yeah, we'll go ahead and move forward with item 18 and 19. We don't necessarily have to address them together. Let's address them individually if we can, please.
The first was direction to prepare a letter in regards to the Crab Emergency Disaster Act of 2017. The letter is in your packet, and it was requested that it be sent to the chairman of the Appropriations Committee along with a number of other staff or legislators. And in that, it's obviously advocating for disaster assistance to the crab industry, from, as well as businesses associated with that.
Correct. Supervisor Berkowitz.
Yes. On both 18 and 19, actually,
let's just do 18
number...
right for right now. Let's just do item number 18.
On number 18, after the second sentence ending with 2017, I'd like to add the following. We request that your committee hold hearings on this bill as soon as possible. And we're sending this to the chairman of the Appropriations Committee.
So one more time on the language, please.
Sure. We request that your committee hold hearings on this bill as soon as possible.
Is that clear, Kylie? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. And is that in the form of a motion, Supervisor?
That's correct.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and open it up for public comment. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board at this time. Any further discussion? Okay, Kylie, can you please poll the vote with the amended language as expressed by Supervisor Berkowitz?
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
I'm going to recuse myself on this particular.
Okay. Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. Okay, item number 19.
Number 19 is a support letter in regards to HR 2330. It's the Yurok Tribe Klamath River Chinook Salmon Disaster Emergency Assistance Act of 2017. And that was directed for a letter to be prepared to be sent also to the chairman of the Appropriations Committee. And it addresses funding appropriate to the tribe as well as extenuating businesses and individuals.
Correct. Supervisor.
Yes, I'd like to request that we have the same language in there. It can fall anywhere in the letter that's appropriate. We request that the Org Committee hold hearings on this bill as soon as possible.
Thank you very much.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Let's go ahead and open it up for public comment. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board at this time. Any further discussion? No. Jay, thank you for getting the language in there also specific to community issues around this disaster. Kylie, can you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna open up item 16, even if it pushes public comment down the road just a touch, which is adopt resolution conveying said county-owned property in Klamath, California, which is the Klamath baseball field. Find based on the reasons stated in the report that the parcel described herein is surplus and is not necessary for county or in the presence of a notary, in the county or in the presence nor the grant deed submitted as Exhibit A conveying fee title portion to the Yurok Tribe's nonprofit. And is this the correct spelling or for Ki-cha-a-nar?
It's not the correct spelling.
Okay.
We will correct the spelling on all the official paperwork.
Thank you, council. And for approve and authorize the chair to sign the memorandum of agreement which allows for the perpetual use of the ball field for public recreational purposes as requested by the county administrative officers. Jay?
Well, I'll start it out, but the bulk of this work is done by county council, and she'll give a very thorough explanation of it.
Very good. Council?
So the tribe had come forward because they have an interest and an ability to get grants for the Klamath Ball Field. The county can't maintain the maintenance of that property, and they were interested in doing Little League and are able to fix up that property. And they came forward and asked the board if the board would be willing to entertain a donation or a transfer of that property to the tribe. We spent some time and found that under Government Code 25372, that is a possibility to transfer to a nonprofit, which they do have for the teaching, training, care, teaching, or training of Native Americans, as it says in the Government Code. That's possible to do a donation. The board had also requested and the tribe agreed with, to do a memorandum of agreement which allows for perpetual use of the ball field for public recreational purposes. So at this time, we have worked with the tribe's attorney on these documents. We would ask that the resolution be approved by the board, and that the board declare that property surplus, not necessary for county or other purposes, and authorize the county administrative officer to sign the grant deed, and also approve the memorandum of agreement stating that that field will be used for public use.
Great, thank you, council. Let's go ahead and open it up to public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board for further discussion.
Yeah,
Supervisor.
This has been a long time coming. We've been working on this for a long time. It was fine. I was glad to see it finally come to fruition. And with that, I will make a motion to do those things. Adopt a resolution based on the reasons stated, authorize the county administrative officer to sign, and approve and authorize the chair to sign the memorandum agreement.
And I think this is also long overdue, and I am pleased to second this motion.
Great, we have a motion, a second. Further discussion by the board.
Yes, thank you,
Supervisor
Mr. Chair. Liz, can you give us a valuation of this property so we have an idea of the kind of donation we're making?
So I'm not sure what the valuation on the property is. I understand that the tribe did work to get an appraisal on the property, and that they're in the process of appealing that because they didn't feel that it was an accurate appraisal, as it took into consideration some of the properties that are not similar in the area. So I'm not really sure. CAO Serena might have some information regarding the property and some of the issues on that property.
Assuming some of the additional land use and zoning around that, I believe it was compared to a fairly large RV park adjacent to it. This property sits within the primary floodplain of the Klamath River, subject to annual flooding, and it's been subject to that quite a few times over the last several years. And I believe that the comparison may have been made to the adjacent large RV park with a lot of development. There isn't a tremendous amount of development potential in regards to these properties in the FP1 zone because they're seasonal uses. And so I think that might be where the discrepancy lies.
But Jay, just as a follow-up question to that, for public edification, can you give the public an idea of the parcel size? At least we can go that route.
It is in the map, which was included with the board materials. I'm trying to find it in here. I don't remember what it was. I want to say 15, but I'm not sure. I don't know.
I don't think they have it listed on the AP map.
Yeah, I don't think so
It's,
either.
okay, hold on, it's 7.55.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it's also the restriction on the property that it be used as a ball field for public use would also change the valuation of that property as well.
Great. Further questions, Supervisor? Supervisor Cal? Okay, very good. Yeah, this has been a long time in coming. I know the board has taken an active interest in this request and worked closely with UROX to help make this happen, and it's very important that these type of relationships continue, and we make every effort, especially in these cases, if a surplus type property is not being utilized and we have an agency out there that's willing to help support these processes, that we make every effort to help make that happen. And we have a motion and a second on the table. Kylie, can you please pull the vote?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to our 10:25 timed public comment. Members of the public may address the board on matters which are within the jurisdiction of the board. If you're addressing the board regarding a matter listed on the agenda, you may be asked to hold your comments until the board takes up that matter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Public comment.
Is this at number 3?
This is public comment period 10:25. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning, Kurt Stromberg. I just wanted to see if you can take some action regarding the geotech funding that just took place for last chance grade and the geotechnical work that they're going to do. The real question I have is simply that we've got the funding now. How long is it going to take for us to get the permits involving that geotech work to start? And what I've heard from our stakeholders meetings that we had is that it will take us a year just to get the permits from the state parks or national parks to be able to go ahead and do the drilling and the work involved. So I'd hope that maybe you can take an active position on that and see if we can move this thing forward a little more quickly than waiting a year, since we have the funding now available. So.
Great.
Chris,
Thank you
you
very
want
much.
to speak on that? Or?
You can, or I
Both
can,
Chris
but-
and I have already met with the director of Caltrans, Malcolm Doherty, last week to kind of push this along and get some better timelines. And the urgency's there, and they know that, and I don't think it's going to be a year. We
Right.
couldn't get an exact date at this point because it had just happened. We
Okay.
spoke with them the day after. Yeah, I think it was the day
It
after
was
the
the day
vote.
after the decision.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it is in the forefront of their mind. We have met with them already, and we will continue to do so.
Okay.
And Kurt, I also welcome you to return during public comment for Jamie Mattioli's presentation today, specifically on this item. I know Jamie will be addressing it, so
Okay.
please return and
Okay.
help make this conversation happen for us.
All right.
Been a great advocate
Yeah.
for the county.
And I think the other thing that I'm concerned about, just from a timing element too, is that Caltrans is doing their added studies, expanded studies for a bypass. And we're talking, what I thought we heard previously was that they were going to have these studies completed by the end of this summer. And now what I'm hearing is, no, it's going to be the end of next summer, next year. And I thought this was moving forward more rapidly than was represented to begin with. So,
Let's see if Jamie has a little bit more information
All
for
right.
us today.
thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Public comment. Please. Good morning.
Morning, Joan Miles.
Morning, Joe.
I wanted to quote from an article published by the Physicians Organizing Committee in the summer of 2016. And the title of the article, I'm just quoting briefly from it. It's a long article. The title is Advocates Ask, Where is the $13 billion in mental health care money? In 2004, California voters approved Proposition 63, which established the state's Mental Health Services Act. This instituted the millionaire's tax, which imposes a 1% tax on incomes above $1 million to be used specifically to provide care for the severely mentally ill, those with schizophrenia, bipolar illness, and other gravely disabled brain disorders. The proposition was passed to deal with the severely mentally ill patient population abandoned in the wake of California shutting down the state's mental institutions. By 2016, 11 years later, MHSA had generated over $13 billion, but only $41.8 million had been spent and allocated. The question then becomes, where is that money, who has that money, and for what purpose? There are consequences and actions that derive from this scenario, that a gigantic and potentially lucrative slush fund has been created, while the number of mentally ill people who end up in jail or homeless and on the streets continues to swell, such that California is now home to 1/3 of the nation's mentally ill, chronically homeless. Physicians Organizing Committee President Jeffrey Wilson stressed the need to see the problems with MHSA in a larger context of fraud and profiteering in the overall healthcare system, and how, for starters, we needed to reach out to others in the state affected by the abuse of this program and to create a base necessary for long-term change.
Thank you, Joe.
Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized, please?
Please, Supervisor Gitlin.
Thank you, Ms. Miles, for bringing it to the attention. I know we can't agendize it at this meeting, but I see Heather Snow is here in our audience, and at our upcoming meeting, I'd like to see this on the agenda, the status of the $416,000 of this Prop 63 monies. What's the timetable on spending it? That's a long-term conversation on options, and to date, I don't think that money has been allocated in any way, shape, form to provide housing for those who suffer from mental illness. So at our next meeting, I would respectfully ask that this matter be addressed to our board to see the status of those funds and how and at what timetable they'll be spent.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor. Consensus to add this to a future agenda? Seeing no issue with that, we'll go ahead and add it to a future agenda. Thank you. Further public comment? Okay, we're going to go ahead and bring it back to the board. At this time, we'll move to our 10:30 timed agenda item, which is adjourn as the Board of Supervisors and reconvene as the Board of Equalization and conduct a public hearing for a change of assessment for Mark Gautrew? Gautrew, my apologies. And for APN number 102-010-34, and that is, I believe, application number AAA 2015-010.
Yeah, here's a letter requesting a,
Can you hand it to the clerk, please?
sorry.
Thank you. And before you start, we also,
I need to swear him in.
we need to swear you in first also, now that we know you're present, but thank you for coming forward. Kylie?
Can I get you to raise your right hand and state your name?
Mark Michael Gautreau.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter now pending before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
So before you start, I think we need to announce the nature of the application, which is a reassessment that you're requesting.
Correct.
And in addition, the current assessed value, which for the land is $295,000, and for improvements to structure is assessed $87,000 for a total of $382,000. And the applicant's opinion of value in this case, $180,000 for the land. Improvement to structures, you agree with assessor at $87,000. Your opinion of value is $267,000. If you wish to present at this time, please feel free.
Yeah, the land was, as you can see on the original tax from 2013, was valuated at 25 and plus acres. When I got it surveyed, it's only 13 and a quarter. There's some mistakes that go all the way back into the 50s and 60s that led to the assessment being 25 acres. It's not 25 acres. I've got the approved survey with me to show you it's only 13 and a quarter. And there was never any reevaluation based on the decrease in land.
Understood. Thank you very much. Any questions for Mark at this time? Supervisor Gitlin.
Mr. Gautreau, so your issue is on the size of your parcel. It's on, this doesn't involve an improvement
No.
of the structure there. So what do the public records say? I guess Steve will be here to present. Is it a 13.25 acre parcel, or is it a 25? And I'm presuming you're doing the comparison of $115,000 difference based on the identification of the size of the parcel. Is that my understanding?
Correct.
Okay, well, I think that can be cleared up by how it shows. Have you been living with this 25-acre identification since you purchased the property? Did you catch it?
The survey was done, and I've got the actual approved survey, about 6 months after I purchased it. I went under the assumption that it was 25 acres. I wasn't in a hurry to get the survey done, and once the survey came back, it was rather shocking. The land had been purchased through the federal government and the NCUA as Checo federal had been taken over by the federal government. I assumed that property laws would protect the buyer because the land was misidentified in the for sale agreement. During the 2006, 2007, 2008 crash, Congress passed a whole bunch of laws to protect the federal government, and they said they have no responsibility for it at all. So my assumption was that they would take the land back. That didn't happen. Subsequently, I filed for a petition to at least change the value of the land on the tax assessment.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Further questions? Okay. Let's go ahead and hear from the assessor at this time. Thank you, Mark. You might be called back, so thank you. Assessor? Good morning, Ms. Perry.
Good morning. Jennifer Perry, Assessor's Office. I'm just going to kind of give a side note before Steve comes up to do any kind of presentation.
Before you start, I got it.
Okay.
You can raise your right hand and state your name.
Jennifer Perry.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter now pending before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Please continue.
Okay, so just to give you a little more understanding of why we're here today, we actually are in agreement with Mr. Gautreaux, and we were originally going to enter into a stipulation agreement that would have been brought forth to you today. But after speaking with him, we understand that his desired result is not just a one-year consideration for reduction, but rather for us to go back and adjust the actual base year, so to kind of lock it in permanently from that point forward under Prop 13. And because of the nature of the timeline and the application process, his only recourse to try and get that done is to go through the appeal process today and ask for that additional consideration through Revenue and Taxation Code 80. So that was the additional letter he provided at the beginning of the hearing.
Copies. Only one copy? Okay. Keep passing.
So that's something that is subject to your approval. If you, we can go through the valuation process if you wish, through, the
But
appraiser could bring that
You're not
forth.
disagreeing?
No, yes, I'm sorry, we are in agreement with the taxpayer. We had seen that the deed, when the government took ownership of the property, or the bank, it listed the entire parcel that we originally thought was 25 acres, and then when they transferred it to Mr. Gautreaux, they added an additional portion that said accepting out that other chunk. So when they got it, it was a bigger piece, and then when they deeded it over, it was smaller. And this has a long history. Our transportation technician, went back to the 50s to research all of this, and it's been a process. It appears there was some attempts at some remapping decades ago, wasn't quite finished all the way, so part of the process was started, but we couldn't finish it out because new deeds were never filed with new descriptions and so forth. So it got to this point where it was kind of some confusion that was inherited over the decades, and we just now are aware that we fixed it, and we're working with him to try and make it the fair assessment that it should be. So
Okay,
that's why we're
thank
here
you very
today.
much.
So
Are we going to hear from Steve also?
Sure.
Okay. Supervisor
Before
Getler?
you go, Jennifer, help me with some clarity here.
Okay.
When was this property purchased?
I believe early 2013.
Okay, so from 2013, we have an ongoing mistake, that the parcel is actually 13.25 acres. And it slipped through the scrutiny of Mr. Gautreaux, and now we are here in an assessment appeals hearing. So is this, whatever decision this assessment appeals board hears, is it retroactive to 2013, or is it retroactive from today on? That's my question.
Right. So as I referred to in the beginning, the reason why we didn't really want to do a stipulation is because we understood the end result is to try and get the base year adjusted. By law, you would usually have a 60-day window from the date of your supplemental that's caused by your change in ownership to file for that. But you also have 3 years from that point, and you can go back and have the base year adjusted, but it has to be done through Revenue and Taxation Code 80. And my interpretation of the materials I read is that it's retroactive in the sense that we can go back to 2013 and adjust the base year, but monetary relief is only allowed from the year that it was filed forward. So we purchased it in 2013. We would be considering 2014, 13, 14, 15, 16 tax rolls at this point. He filed in 2015 the appeal document. So we could change the base year as of 2013, but we can only actually change the tax bill from 2015 and 16 to give him the monetary relief for the difference.
This 3-year window you just referred to,
Right.
3 years.
That's just
That's exceeded.
That's an additional timeline to file for the consideration of adjustment. Yeah, and I don't know if
Clear as mud. You want to clear this up, counsel?
Yeah, so I think the same as Ms. Perry is stating, Revenue and Taxation Code 80 A5 states that it can't be, the relief can't be retroactive to when the application is filed, but that those years plus the 3 previous years can be adjusted, the base year can be adjusted. And so that would be, so the monetary relief all the way back to that period is not possible, but it is possible to the point that he did file the application. So it's kind of an interesting section of the Revenue and Taxation Code, and he actually does have to come here to the board to request that relief under Revenue and Taxation Code. So that's why I believe they're here today.
Further questions?
Yeah, again, thank
Supervisor?
you, Elizabeth, for clarification. So the time he filed, it would be 2015, is that what I'm hearing? So that the retroactivity can go back to 2015, but not to 2013, according to the taxation
The
code.
monetary.
The monetary, that's what I'm
Yes.
referring to.
However, the base year can be adjusted prior to that, which will allow him to kind of lock in that base year value so that it is under Proposition 13.
Which is the 267.
Yes.
Okay. Further questions, Supervisor?
Question, it
Supervisor
was
Cowan.
all filed in 15, and here we are at 17. What was the 2-year process? Why did it take this long to get to us?
Well, we had a lot of back and forth with documentation and trying to make sure things were correct on file. Like I said, the transfer clerk it took about a week of her time going back to archives and trying to piece together what had happened and reviewing the new survey that Mr. Gautreaux had done. So we just wanted to make sure that we had all of our ducks in a row and everything was really appropriate before we adjusted it by that much. We do have the 2-year time window, which we're still in time with, but of course, yeah, we do like to handle them as soon as possible. This one was just really an anomaly, and it was difficult for us just to make sure everything was correct before we move forward. So,
Thank you.
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson, please.
Yeah, my question is, this is something that has to come before the board. Is that why you guys didn't settle it through your office? So
That's
we have-
correct.
okay.
Yeah, so with it was outside the window for us to do anything in-house. Appeal-wise, the way this appeal looks, if he were to come in without asking for additional relief under Code 80, we would have to consider only giving him relief for the one tax year of 2015. It would be like a Prop 8 adjustment for the 1 year. And so this allows us to go back and lock it in under Prop 13, so it doesn't have to be under review every year. He gets the benefit of keeping that base from now until, something changes, either it sells or there's new construction.
Thank you, Ms. Perry.
And so we're all in agreement. You're in agreement with what he's requesting?
Yes, that's correct. We went back and looked at some market comparables again, this time considering it only being about a 13-acre piece instead of 25, and we came up with a number that was within $5,000 of what Mr. Gautreaux was requesting.
Very
So
good.
we're definitely in agreement.
Very good. Okay. Well, further questions at this time? I don't know if we necessarily need to hear back from the applicant at this point, or Steve. I think, based on what I'm hearing, we're all fairly clear on the subject at this point.
I think that my only clarity is where does it go back to? What are we legally able to do according to Prop 13 restrictions?
Yeah, so so the filing year is July 2nd to September 15th for the new base year. And so that would have been his filing period for 2015, which can be adjusted monetarily by your action. And then also if the applicant misses the 60-day supplemental assessment filing, the new base year shall be appealed. So basically, he has 3 years previous to that, which his time frame, 2013, falls within those 3 years. So the base year can be adjusted by your action. And then just as a side note, in terms of the application itself, normally you can't do anything outside of the application, but case law does also support the R&T Section 80 ability to request that base law at the hearing.
Thank you, counsel.
Jennifer, are you comfortable with the 180 evaluation on land, or was your figure higher than that?
No, I believe it was the same.
I thought it was a $5,000
It was close, but it was close enough for us to agree. As long as we're within 5%, then we
Okay.
can go ahead and enroll it.
I'd like to make that motion to I'm trying to word this so I don't get myself into council trouble over here, is to go back to the year in question of 2013 as the base year and make the adjustment accordingly to evaluate the land at $180,000. And then do the accounting on that. It's a little convoluted, so help me out on this, council. We can go back to 2013 to make this correction on this 13.25 acre parcel.
For the base year valuation, yes.
Okay, so moved.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Do we have to continue on with that and go that we only go back to 2015 for the monetary part of it, council?
Yeah, so I think you could do the motion to adjust the base year and to adjust to the filing year. So
Separate motion or two motions?
it could be the same thing, yes.
I'll include I'll include 2015, and that was for the adjustment. Is that
The
correct?
monetary
The monetary
adjustment.
adjustment. Okay.
As amended. Do we have a second to the amended motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the Board of Equalization for a decision in this matter. Kylie, can you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Perry. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to adjourn from the Board of Equalization and reconvene as the Board of Supervisors and conduct public hearing, adopt a resolution, and direct staff to submit applications to the Department of Water Resources for the formation of the Delaware County Groundwater Sustainability Agency for the management of the Smith River Plain Groundwater Basin as requested by the Assistant Director of Community Development Department. And there he is, Mr. Hooper.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
We're back. So I'm happy to be here before the board this morning. This is a follow-up recommendation based off of the board's previous direction. So that was at the last meeting. If you recall, at the last meeting, I did give a presentation on SGMA that provided an overview of the law as well as an update as to where things are at in terms of the implementation. Specifically, we're approaching the June 30th deadline by which groundwater sustainability agencies or GSAs must be formed. If no other agency proposes to form a GSA, the county is the presumed GSA, as we discussed, for all unmanaged areas within the basin. However, the county does have to affirm or disaffirm this responsibility. That affirmation would take form of a resolution, which you have before you today, as well as some other minor items, excuse me, which are identified in the state water code. Under the water code, GSAs are intended to be local management units overseeing the implementation of SGMA. Once a GSA is established, it is then responsible for ensuring that the basin is managed in a sustainable manner. If local agencies fail to form a GSA or a GSAs, the state then has the authority, come July 1st, to intervene in the management of the basin, which would include, among other things, levying fees, which we discussed at the last meeting, as well as requiring detailed reporting of groundwater extraction by most extractors within the basin directly to the State Water Resources Control Board. So in order to ensure that basins are managed in a sustainable manner, GSAs for medium priority basins, such as the Smith River Plain Basin, are required to be managed under a groundwater sustainability plan or a GSP. That would have to occur no later than January 31st of 2022. So we do have a little time between now and the time management would actually have to happen under those GSPs. The GSP is a long-range planning document. It's intended to establish measurable objectives along with interim milestones so that the basin achieves sustainability within 20 years of the adoption of the GSP. Shortly after the governor signed SGMA into law, the state released a strategic plan for the rollout of SGMA. That included 4 principal phases. Phase 1 was the realignment of basins and the establishment of basin governance. Those would be the GSAs principally in the basin boundary modification process. Phase 2 was the development and adoption of GSPs. Phase 3 was the initial management through water budgets, and that would occur through 2022 through about 2040. So again, this is a long-range planning process. And then ultimately, Phase 4 would be the sustainable groundwater management itself, which under the 20-year time frame after the adoption of the plan would put us out into 2040, off in the distant future, but nonetheless something to be concerned about. So we're nearing the conclusion of Phase 1 of the strategic plan. in that the state is finalizing basin boundaries and basin prioritization, and will soon be moving into phase 2, which is the actual development and adoption of GSBs. As we talked about at the previous meeting, our expectation is that as phase 1 is concluded, the state would actually reconsider its prioritization of the Smith River Plain Basin based on actual data that suggests that the basin has historically been operated in a sustainable manner, and that the volume of groundwater extracted from the basin is below their established threshold for prioritization. I did give a presentation at the City Council. There was a concern expressed by one member of the public that, well, if we don't do a GSA, that means we don't care about groundwater, and we're not going to be collecting any data. That's not true. Under the existing CASGEM program, the state and the county do actually collaborate on the collection of groundwater data, so that process would still continue even if we do get reduced to a low or very low priority. So we're not ignoring the basin. Data will still continue to be collected. If there's any problems that are highlighted through the CASGEM process, presumably we'd need to respond to those. So at this time, it would be staff's recommendation that the county form a GSA to ensure that there are no unmanaged areas within the basin. Formation of a GSA by June 30th would achieve the goal of avoiding state intervention while the basin reprioritization process is completed. As required under the Water Code, the clerk has published and posted 2 separate notices of this public hearing in order to invite local agencies and stakeholders to provide their input on the GSA formation question. I've not received any comments from the public regarding the specific question of GSA formation. As they are the largest volume extractor in the basin, as I mentioned, I did give a presentation to the City Council. The council was very supportive of the county taking this role on. I've also had some other conversations with other CSDs, including the Smith River Community Services District, who are also very supportive of the county taking this role on. As you'll note in the resolution, one of the findings does include a stipulation that if another local agency were to come forward with the intention of forming a GSA, say they want to go their own route at some point in the future, that the county wouldn't oppose that. And from a staff perspective, I would certainly not be opposed to any other local agency coming forward as a GSA.
Sure you wouldn't.
So with the board's approval today, the plan would be to take this resolution and to gather the other additional items that are necessary and get that submitted to the Department of Water Resources, giving them our indication that we do intend to do this. And hopefully, as I mentioned, through the reprioritization process, we'll end up with perhaps arguably a better outcome in a few months, and we'll just have to let that process play out.
Sure
So
will.
that is my presentation today, and I'm available if there's any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Questions from the board before we open it up to public comment? Okay, let's go ahead and open it up to public comment at this time. Please approach the dais.
Linda Sutter County. I got a phone call from Eileen Cooper before I walked in here. And so I'm out of my league on this stuff, but she wanted to convey that this GSA thing that you're formulating, she doesn't feel that the county should be the only person involved in the GSA and have the total control. She feels that that all parties, there should be other districts involved with this so that there's more fair representation.
Understood.
So, that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Sutter, for your comments. Further public comment at this time? Good morning.
Aloha, Supervisors, Chairman Howard, Brandon Fraley of the Tallawahdaini Nation, Chief Governance Officer. I anticipate an invitation to the establishment of the Groundwater Sustainability Board and look forward to you guys reaching out to the tribe in this matter. Thank you.
All right. Further public comment? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board for discussion. Just like to say, I know this has been quite a bit of work, starting with our Resources Committee, but especially with Community Development. Ms. Kungstall, Mr. Hooper, you guys have done an incredible job, as we have expressed over the past couple months. Specific to this work, I know it's been incredibly difficult to follow, as the legislation was not made easy for any community in the state of California to get through this matter. And because of the legislation and the data, in this case, that was far beyond accurate, especially for the Smith River Basin. We have been put in the position we were put in today to take steps that were necessary to form the GSA ourselves and try to move our basin back to a low or very low priority. I know the efforts of the Del Norte County Farm Bureau and Resource Conservation District also have played a critical role as part of this discussion in helping to move the needle per se with not only the Department of Resources but also our legislators to weigh in on this issue and really reveal the mistakes that were made in the legislation that were somewhat short-sighted at this point. But we were very happy that DWR and staff have recognized those shortfalls and, more importantly, shown that the data was that they used to throw Del Norte County into a medium priority was not only inaccurate, it was false, and that we were far below the designation that would originally, if the data was accurate, put us in probably a very low prioritization, which in this case, we hope to get there someday, but we have to take the necessary steps now to protect ourselves. And right now, after reaching out to various districts within the community, they are advocating for Del Norte County to take that lead role as the agency in formation of the GSA. And I'd encourage the board to move forward with that position, and at this time would look for a motion.
And I would be happy to make that motion to keep on moving forward with the water management.
And adopt the resolution.
And adopt a resolution, whatever the number is.
2017-062.
2017-062.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. Further discussion? Seeing none. Kylie, can you please pull the vote?
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. Council, do we need to read the resolution in the record?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Very good. Motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Hooper. Thank you to the RCD and Farm Bureau, and for all the efforts of community development. And speaking towards Brianna, thank you for attending today and weighing in. I'm sure we will reach out. More importantly, Randy will reach out with community development when the time's appropriate. All right, we're going to go ahead and move to our next agenda item, which is time for 1055 update and current activities and future funding for Last Chance Grade, presented by Jamie Mattioli. Welcome, Jamie. I also see Karen's in the audience. Thank you for coming today, Karen.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me.
You're
Jamie
welcome.
Mattioli, Caltrans Project Manager, and Karen is here for questions and answers if we have questions related to construction later. And this is an informational update that I've given, basically the same update to the Transportation Board and the City Council. And I'm talking about, thank you, Kylie, three things, really. The current damage at that Last Chance Grade from this storm year, and the efforts to repair the damage. Secondly, the $5 million, which we touched on already for geotechnical studies. And finally, a parallel effort to pursue fully funding and approving the project that we're working on with FHWA. So this is a look at Last Chance Grade. The top of the image would be north, the bottom is south. We're pointing to a bridge here, Wilson Creek Bridge. The beach and parking lot are down here. And the slide areas are basically here. The big blue area is what's known as the melange, and the slow undulating area that's not as prone to large failures, but slow movement of the roadway. And we get into the active slide area. This yellow slide area is known as the Wilson Creek Wall slide area. And then you get into the southern Last Chance Grade slide and the northern Last Chance Grade slide, which are the more active areas. This year we did have well, we'll show the picture here. We had a slide in the Wilson Creek Wall area. This is just south of Wilson Creek Wall, where we lost a section of the roadway. We lost use of the southbound lane, and we've made the effort to shore up the northbound lane now through an emergency contract that was already in place going back through last year. We put in some soil nail wall, or some soil nails and soil nail wall and some vertical piles. This is the wall north of where these folks are standing. This gentleman is from Senator Dianne Feinstein's office, and he was touring the site. And this is a picture of the wall that just sheared. And ultimately, we had this section of road fall out. Further to the north, going back through March of last year, we had damage occur at these two retaining walls. And this movement has actually gotten worse this season. So we've seen this failure here at Wilson Creek Wall, and lots of other cracking and movement of the road and damage to other retaining walls. So quite a bit of damage this year. That ultimately we got approved to provide $27.6 million worth of construction improvements for the damage that dates back to March of 2016 and includes the damage this year. There's also funds for right-of-way and for support to bring that total to $35 million for the storm damage. And funding from this storm damage work is also paying for the expert risk assessment, which I'll talk about later. So the damage assessment form is approving repairs or extensions or new retaining walls for 8 retaining walls. 4 walls are either being extended or newly constructed, and 4 walls are being repaired. This is that southbound lane at that failure at post mile 14.4 south of the Wilson Creek Wall, where we've put in these vertical micro piles, and we also have a soil nail wall. It's basically shored up now and waiting for to get the contractor in place. We have designs and we're ready to build that wall. So that these repairs will go out this summer. The work on the 8 walls will begin this summer, and folks will be working through the winter on these projects. And again, Karen's here if we really had specific questions for us. On to the $5 million for geotech studies. So the news came out that the $5 million was approved. I understand that this board did write a letter of support for the effort, as well as many other folks in the community, Crescent City Council, and a number of other folks. And I understand that Supervisor Howard was in attendance in San Diego with my boss, Matt Brady, when this was passed. So basically, the CTC approved the $5 million to begin our, is that not correct?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, I wish it was. Okay.
I could be multiple places at once.
That's very good. So the scope of the work is to perform geotech evaluations on the 7 alternatives that we had proposed in our project study report that was completed in 2016. We're looking at those alignments and looking for places where there could be instability issues, where we might have to adjust the alignments, really looking at whether the alignments are viable geotechnically. So this is an important part of studying the alternatives and making progress on, ultimately, on what would be the environmental phase of the realignment project. And again, the realignment project is not fully funded or approved, but we are providing these funds to kickstart that process and put us on the path towards completing that project when it does get funded. And I appreciate the question from Mr. Stremberg on the timeline of getting permits out there, and that I agree it won't take a year for the permits themselves to be acquired to do this drilling, but there are a number of other steps that we need to do before we even apply for permits. So I have a draft schedule right now, it's in a position where I need to bring this to my team and fully vet it. We actually have a team meeting tomorrow where this is really high on our agenda, is fleshing out this schedule for the geotech drilling. So it's possible that we can do some drilling in the spring of 18. And some issues might, depending on the scope of the drilling, the environmental clearance could become more complicated. And there could be some locations where the work is not complicated and it's easier to get out there. So we're looking at those issues and we're developing that schedule right now. And I'm happy to answer that further if there are further questions on it. Pursuit of full funding. So Caltrans and FHWA are working hand in hand to really answer the key questions that we need to answer to get full funding for the project. We're seeking funds out of the federal emergency relief program, and there are a number of issues with funding a project this large and of this nature. So we really do need to work closely with FHWA and to meet with their geotechnical experts and meet with their folks from the California division to have a good basis for fully funding the project. The first things we're doing is right now, Mr. Stromberg again mentioned that he would like to see that process completed sooner than what I had stated, which is by the summer of 2018. And we're working very closely with them right now. We're getting together the geotech information we have. For Last Chance Grade, we've been collecting information for years, borehole information, drilling information, and we're just synthesizing that right now into one report where we can look at it with the folks from FHWA, the geotech experts, and say, what do we understand about the route? And ultimately answer the question, can we maintain the facility as it is and have that be a reliable facility that will last for 30 years or 50 years in the future? And ultimately, is it worth the investment it would take to produce that reliable facility in place? Or is it the responsible decision to realign the alignment as we are proposing, as we suspect is the case right now? So we're working with them to answer those questions. And that's really what my update entails today, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor Cowan.
Well, I think there's a lot of dates that get floated around and confusion that goes on top of it. So I think what Stromberger was talking about is the economic impact study, which is part of this whole package. That's going to be done this summer, correct? They're hoping just that part of it. So now that's in a package with more items that is going to be done down the line. So, I mean, there are things that are milestones that are being hit, and I think it's important to talk about that. I think also you didn't mention, and I think it's important to mention, is that I believe a waiver was received to be able to go after the $5 million and use state funding while we're going after federal funding, because that's a big no-no. And no one talks about that a lot. And I think that's huge to be able to get that waiver to go forward. That put us ahead of the game. And I think that's another big issue that people need to be aware of, that we're that much further along because we're able to start with state funding that we received last week because of the waiver. So I just wanted to point those things out because those are the good things.
Thank you. Yes.
Excellent. Supervisor Gitlin.
Yeah, my comments are more in the form of questions. So let's just talk about the allocation of the $5 million, which is approved by the California Transportation Commission. And I know you don't know the timetable, but when you do, I would very much appreciate you coming back to our board and reporting that timetable, even though it may adjust. Now, we have 7 routes, or 6 or 7 routes, including the existing route for the bypass. What is the process? You're going to do selected drilling along each of the 7 routes, even though we haven't selected any. Is that where this $5 million is being allocated? And then when you finish that, I have one other question with the existing alignment. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you're correct. We're studying and drilling the 7 alternatives. And basically, there are a number of steps that we need to take in order to get out there and study the alternatives. The first thing we need to do is survey the routes, go out and physically place stakes along the proposed alignment in Green Diamond land and in State Parks land. To do that, we actually need to get a permit, a scientific investigation permit. And following the staking, we'll send our geotech folks out and they'll go out and physically view the landscape and look for instability issues and look at access issues. And this will be key to them developing really what will be the investigation plan. So they need to get out there and see this in 3D to be able to develop their plan.
The second part of my question involves keeping the existing alignment intact. There is no alternative. We don't have detour around it. So this funding has yet to be determined. Correct me if I'm wrong, is it 25 million or is it 35 million in the request to keep the current alignment intact while you are studying geotech studies?
35 million is the total sum for support and construction and right-of-way. 27.6 is the number for construction that's approved, just to maintain the current alignment, just to repair the storm damage that has occurred since 2016.
Now, we're awaiting Federal Highways approval of that monies.
That's been approved.
Okay, all right. So anticipating that, well, what's our next step in waiting? That money to keep the current alignment has been approved, and we're moving forward and keeping that going, and that's enough funding to keep this thing moving while the mountain continues to move. And I think we have, you didn't identify it, but are there still 4 active slides over a 3-mile period?
There are the 4 slide areas, and we continue to monitor movement. Back to the funding. We do have, right now, the approval we need to go out there and do all the repair work. We're not waiting for any further approval.
Good.
We're beginning this summer. Karen's got things lined up and ready to go. The $5 million is also approved. We don't need to wait any further. My team is assembled. We're taking the steps we need. We're coordinating with our stakeholders, and we're good to go. We're moving forward, and we're just still developing the schedule somewhat. And the schedule is based on what the scope of drilling is. So getting that geotechnical investigation plan will determine our schedule. All
right, thanks for the clarification, Gene.
And then the long-term funding, that is what is taking a lot of coordination with FHWA. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Supervisors?
Yeah, there seems to be the position that of some people that keep saying that, well, we just need to take the shortest route, take a cat out there and let's start building a road, and why aren't you doing that? And I think you're explaining that very well, that there's a lot that needs to go through with this, that we need to make sure the road's going to last for 50-plus years. That's important, without substantial maintenance like we're doing now on the current alignment. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there. Thank you for the information that you brought forward.
Sure. Jamie, I'm going to open it up for public comment at this time.
Sure.
Board may call you back just in case, but public comment on the presentation by Caltrans. Okay. Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and bring it back to the board. It was not an action item. I'd just like to say that Supervisor Cowan has expressed, we did have a chance to sit down with Malcolm Doherty in Sacramento last week, and this was obviously top on our agenda. And we know there's been a lot of work by Caltrans into these projects. I know Karen on point on a daily basis on Last Chance Grade. She's living it. We appreciate it, Karen. We really do. Jamie, welcome aboard. With your new energy, we hope that the alternative is on a timeline that really gets us to what I heard Malcolm express many months ago at Last Chance Grade, which is let's try to get this done in 10 years. And with that emergency funding in place through FHWA, I think that's extremely important with that $35 million secured to really help the current alignment stay there. We do understand the specifics around sensitivities, not only cultural resources, but also natural resources and biological. And those in particular, when you work around old growth, they're going to present timing restrictions specifically to geotechnical drilling, whether it's a salmon, a salamander, or a marbled murrelet in the trees. Those breeding seasons are going to play havoc when you can get out there and do your work. But I know you guys will get it done. As Malcolm Doherty expressed to Supervisor Cowan and I last week, and he said publicly a number of times, but on television, there are 3 things that keep me up at night. One is whether or not my employees return home safely. Number 2, a large earthquake. And number 3, Last Chance Grade. And when those things are said by the director of Caltrans, that really lets us know that Del Norte County, more importantly, our situation here with Last Chance Grading and finding an alternative route is a very clear priority on his agenda to become funded. And he expressed no less that he is going to push forward, but more importantly, he is looking towards the direction from Region 1 and Matt Brady and your help as staff to help get us there and provide that direction to him so he knows how to support and move that football down the field. So it's very appreciated. I know this board, I think, expressed and shares my concern that this is still a priority, and you guys are going to get there, but we're going to get there together, and we're going to do whatever we can to help you out. Thank you much. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next timed agenda item, which is supposed to be at 11:05. We're just a little bit over, which is Yurok lands discussion, and we're going to have a special presentation at this time from Amy Cordalis from the Yurok tribe. Oh, my apologies. We seem to have a council member in the room. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, David Jensa, Senior, Vice Chair, Yurok Tribe. We have a PowerPoint here today we want to present, but we want to present our the Yurok land legislation. And one of the things that we understand that the board before had the problem of the taxes revenues that were, maybe not collecting. We want to show you that the majority of the land legislations is in Humboldt County. And there's the Yurok experimental forest that's what's in Delnor County, which is Forest Service land that, doesn't collect on taxes. But the remaining portions of the land that's up towards, maybe heading towards the Blue Creek area, it's in Delnor County. We're paying taxes on that. And if it should be logged, we will pay taxes on that. So with that, we have Amy Cordalis, and she's going to present a PowerPoint on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Ms. Cordalis. Good morning.
Good morning. Ayakwi, Neknau, Amy Cordalis, Nuak Rekwa, Numatewa, Waklau. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to present to the board today on the tribe's lands legislation proposal. I wanted to say thanks to the staff also for helping us get here and to present today. It's been a real pleasure working with all of you. I understand I have like 10 to 15 minutes, so I will get going with things.
We'll try for 10 with 15 minutes with the Q&A.
Okay, sounds good. My goal today is to walk through the tribe's lands legislation proposal, address any questions that the board may have, and our ultimate goal would be for the county to write a letter of support for the lands legislation. So with that, I guess we'll jump into the PowerPoint, and I'm not totally sure how we move through the slides. Do I just, oh, there's a mouse. Okay, that's great. I've also provided a draft of the PowerPoint to you all. I wasn't able to get the map into the PowerPoint, so it is there in your packets. And then also with IT, I don't know if there's a way to connect my computer, and then that way the audience could also see the maps. We don't have to delay to work through that, so I'll just go ahead and proceed. So the tribe has been working on a lands legislation proposal for about 20 years now. What you see in front of you is the most current draft of the proposal, which was introduced by Congressman Huffman in December in the last Congress. We are currently working on reintroduction with Congressman Huffman, and we don't have any certain dates when he will reintroduce it. We're working through some of the final issues, working with the local stakeholders such as yourself and the other tribes to address any kind of remaining issues on the proposal. The gist of the current draft is that it does a few things, and I'll just kind of walk through this and figure out if I can, let's see. So, next, okay, all right. Okay, so this is the overview. The main provisions of the act are that it authorizes increased tribal and federal partnerships for federal land and resource management by authorizing cooperative agreements between the Yurok tribe and various federal agencies. Mostly that would be Redwood National Park and the Forest Service to better manage lands within Delnor County and within Humboldt County. The scope of the co-management I'll get into when we talk in more detail. I just want to give an overview of each of the provisions. The legislation also transfers just over 1,200 acres of the Yurok experimental forest into trust for the Yurok tribe. It adjusts our reservation boundary east from where it is now, the eastern boundary. It pushes it further east to include lands that we have recently acquired. It also designates Bald Hills Road as the Yurok Scenic Byway, which would then allow us to access federal grants for road maintenance available under the Scenic Byway Act. And finally, it confirms the tribe's governing body and documents. So I'll move into each provision here. I'm just going to do it this way. Okay, so into the cooperative agreement section. So again, what this does is that it confirms the tribe's 2006 cooperative agreement with the Department of Interior, which basically that agreement came about as a result of the tribe's lawsuit it brought after the fish kill. In that agreement, it was recognized that the fish kill could have been avoided by better management, communication, and work between the federal agencies responsible for managing the Klamath River and the tribe. And so in the agreement, it was agreed that there would be more communication, information sharing, identifying specific projects that the tribe and the federal government could work on to improve really the health of the river. And so the legislation confirms that agreement, and that's necessary because we've had a problem implementing and getting the Interior Department to uphold their end of the deal. And so this would confirm that, and also it would authorize the tribe to be a co-lead for NEPA purposes for various issues in the lower Klamath Basin that affect the river. And so really what we're talking about is the area kind of up into like Orleans and downward. That's the scope of that particular agreement. It also requires the Secretary of Interior to enter into cooperative agreements with the tribe for natural resource management and administration within our reservation and to some extent within Redwood National Park. Again, the tribe has various cultural natural resources that are located off of our own tribal lands. Even within our lands, as you all probably know, the village of Waukel is in our reservation right on the south side of the mouth of the Klamath River, but that land is currently owned by the federal government. It's national park land, and we've had a lot of troubles over the years, really accessing that land, managing that land, protecting the spiritual nature of that land. And so these agreements would allow us to enter into an arrangement with the parks so that we could better protect our interests there, land management, that kind of thing. So I'll go on to the next one. Let's see, so then the next provision authorizes just over 1,200 acres of Forest Service land to be transferred into trust for the Yurok tribe. This land is noted on your map here. It's this little green circle in 14N1E. That is the land that basically abuts the Yurok tribe's most northern reservation. That's where the, what is that building called? What is it? The lodge is located. Let's see, and right now the Forest Service experimental branch owns that land, and one of their requests was that they wanted to continue to do any kind of research that they were already doing on the land, and the tribe agreed to that. There's express consent to that in the legislation, and we also agree to manage and use that land for conservation purposes only. So, let's see. The next provision adjusts the Yurok tribe's eastern reservation boundary further to the east to include all lands that we have acquired through various land acquisitions over the past several years. Back to your map, the current reservation boundary line is in red, And the new reservation boundary line would include that yellow line. So again, most of the land that would be included within the reservation, the tribe owns or will own. There's a little chunk up at the top of the Blue Creek watershed that is still Forest Service land, and that would stay as Forest Service land. Let's see, the next provision, again, authorizes the tribe's designation of Bald Hills Road as a UROC scenic byway. That again allows us to access federal grants for management of byways. And why that's important is so everyone knows where Bald Hills Road is, I imagine, in Delaware County. For us, that is the major road artery, I should say, that connects the south portion of the reservation to the north portion of the reservation in Delaware County. We have several tribal employees, tribal members who live up in the Witchpeck area at the top of the reservation and who use Bald Hills Road daily to commute to work down in Klamath. As you all know, part of the road is unpaved. It's kind of a dangerous scenario, and so what we're hoping to do is access some more federal funds so we can better take care of that, make it a more safer commute for our employees and tribal members. The last provision is confirmation of the tribe's governing body and documents. And what that means is that Congress would confirm the Yurok tribe's constitution and our tribal laws. So the Hoopa Valley tribe received the same type of congressional confirmation of their tribal documents, their constitution, their tribal laws, and their governing body in the Hoopa Yurok Settlement Act. At the time of the Hoopa Yurok Settlement Act in 1988, the Yurok tribe did not have a separate governing body, and we certainly didn't have a constitution, and so our constitution, our governing body, was not ratified. What this particular provision has done for the Hoopa tribe is help them with some of the jurisdictional issues they have on the reservation, especially when it comes to matters regarding the health, safety, and welfare of their tribal members. And in most cases, that regards marijuana cultivations. It creates a stronger argument that the tribe has jurisdiction over non-members so that then they can enforce whatever is necessary in order to protect their communities. So it's not an all-out, you have that jurisdiction. It is just sort of an arrow in your quiver, if you will, to create the argument. We'd like to be able, on our reservation, to have the same kind of arrow. And so that's why we're asking for confirmation of that. So with that, I think that's it. My contact information is here along with our Deputy General Counsel, who is also available to answer any questions. And I'm happy to address any questions that the board may have.
Excellent. Thank you for that presentation, Amy. Let's go ahead and open it up for some questions for Amy from the board first, and then we'll move to public comment. Supervisor Gitlin.
Amy, thank you for that report. I guess we have a name to this bill, HR 6469, is that?
That was the bill number assigned to the proposal in the last Congress. And I don't know if when it is introduced, it will be, assigned a new name or a new number. It may be.
Now, did I misunderstand you when I heard you say that Bald Hill Road was in Delaware County? I thought I heard you say that. Is that Bald Hill Road?
If I said that, I misspoke because it's in Humboldt County.
Yeah, all right. Now, of the 1,229 acres, how much of it is actually Delaware County land and not necessarily U.S. Forest Service land, private entity land,
So currently, it's 1,229 acres. It's this little jaunt right there, which all of that land is in Delaware County, and that land is currently owned by the U.S. Forest Service.
All right, I'm looking at the map right here, and I'm seeing the county line, and I'm seeing the red lines, which says Yurok Reservation, and it goes well into Humboldt County. So I'm looking at a small section behind Klamath, right near Klamath, where that looks like again, it's hard to tell, and then the expanded land, the revised land, kind kind of goes to the east and elbows up a little bit. Is that what I'm looking at right here? And
Yeah.
I'm showing you this. So how much of that is Forest Service land as compared with private timber land?
So we'll just walk through the various types. So the yellow land here,
Yes.
or the land within this yellow boundary in 13N and 14N, which is this light green color, that is all Forest Service land. If you go southwest of that, you will see darker colored lands. Those are lands that the tribe owns, well, that we will own in fee. Actually, I think we just closed on those lands, so we do own those lands in fee. And then the red boundaries there, that's the Yurok Reservation boundaries as they currently stand. And it's not clearly noted on this map, but you can see that there, within the Yurok Reservation, there is some tribal trust land, there's private fee land, there's tribal fee land, there's just an assortment of different land statuses within there. Did that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Further questions? Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yeah, and just getting to that, how many acres is that of an increase on the increased boundary in the Del Norte County side?
Oh, on the Del Norte County side. So my vice chair asked me that question on the way over, and I don't have the exact numbers, but I believe it to be somewhere around like 10 to 15,000 acres. So, and again, it's important to note that the bill does not transfer any land into trust through this area. The bill only transfers into trust the Yurok Experimental Forest. So the land status of these lands, the Forest Service lands and then the tribal fee lands in Del Norte County doesn't change. So it stays the same. But this land would then, which is about 10 to 15,000 acres, would then be within the Yurok Reservation.
Okay, and then getting back to the 1,229 acres, I know David said that that you would pay taxes on the timber harvested.
No, that part wouldn't be harvested. And it's Forest Service land. When it gets transferred, it'll still be in that status. But
In the status.
that you're talking about, maybe the 10 to 15,000 acres, that right there, if you were ever to log it, that's in fee, and if we were ever to log it, it's taxed.
So the 1,229 acres is never to be logged?
And that's right. And that's,
stipulated?
I'm sorry.
And that's stipulated in the bill?
Yeah, and right now, as it is, you can't log that land anyway. So under the Forest Service experimental branch owns that land, and so it's not just regular Forest Service land that you could have a, timber management plan and that kind of thing. Because it's experimental, it's old growth, pretty much everyone has told us, if you want that land into trust, you will not log it. And we're okay with that.
So I guess my question at that point would be why?
Why?
Why? What's the benefit to the tribe? What's the benefit to Del Norte County? What's the benefit in expanding the boundaries, let's say, or taking this land that you're probably already utilizing somewhat? What you'd like to do with a co-management type plan? So I guess why? I guess is the question.
So I think there's two issues.
And benefits.
Benefits, okay, so there's two issues. So there's the land into trust, so the 1,200 acres. That land right now, because it is old growth, it has a lot of our very important cultural natural resources, various things we use to make baskets, for example, things that we use for our regalia. That is a place where we always went, where we always will go. It also has, some fallen redwoods, which is important to us for building our canoes and building our homes, our, traditional homes. And right now, the Forest Service doesn't have money to manage it. And so they don't manage it. They don't maintain it. There, for example, is a road on there, and there's some bridges on there that are impassable. And so it's dangerous. It's flat out, it's a hazard. And the Forest Service over the years has told us, we don't have any money, sorry, Yurok tribe, there's nothing we can do. And so the tribe would like to be able to put that land into trust so that we can better manage it and better take care of it. So the benefit is taking care of the land, being the steward of the land, maintaining the roads, for example, being able to manage the land in a way that enhances the cultural values for us. So that's on that one. The next one is the provision that extends the reservation boundary to include the 10 to 15,000 acres within the Yurok reservation, even though it doesn't transfer any land into trust for us. So the big value to us is that this little elbow, if you will, that's the Blue Creek watershed. Blue Creek has several significant, important, well, I should say, it's important to us for lots of reasons. One, biological, as you guys probably know, Blue Creek is one of the most important salmon tributaries to the entire Klamath River. At the bottom of the river, there is a spring where the salmon will go and they hang out there. You guys have probably caught a couple
Very
nice
familiar.
fish close to that
Very
area. So what we want to do is turn that whole area eventually into a salmon sanctuary. So it would be a place where, the salmon can go, they can always have that area. And the idea is that even though we wouldn't own it, if it's within our reservation, what we would like to do is be able to enter into cooperative agreements with the Forest Service to manage the land for those salmon sanctuary purposes. In addition to the biological reasons, there's also the spiritual reasons. That includes some of our high country, and we would like to be able to make sure that that area maintains its, and that we preserve its, unique, pristine qualities that enables us to continue our religious practices. So we would love for us to have more control over that, but what is reasonable and what we are hearing is politically feasible is, adjusting the reservation boundary and then working on these cooperative agreements.
So there would never be any intentions of putting that land into trust?
I can't say that with, certainty right now. I think that's always a discussion we would want to have, and of course, if we decided to pursue that, we would speak with you all. What I can say is that, we wouldn't acquire an interest through this legislation in the land, so it would stay Forest Service land. So in order to get it into trust, we would have to, in some way, transfer the land. We'd have to convince the federal government to either transfer it into trust for us, or we'd have to, somehow we'd have to acquire title to the land and then get it into trust. Also, within these lighter green or darker green lands, we had to get real creative about how to acquire those. So we own them in tribal fee right now. So the tribe owns them in fee, but we had to enter into various agreements with other organizations that allow or made us commit to certain things that prohibit us from putting that land into trust for a long period of time.
So what about access? And why aren't you just putting the experimental forest, why aren't you just making that part of your boundaries instead of putting that into fee title? Is there going to be an issue with access? And another question, if I can throw it on top of you before I forget about it, is where do you get the money to maintain the bridges and the roads that the Forest Service can't?
Good question. So the first one is that the expansion of the reservation boundaries would actually expand the reservation boundary to include the forest, or the Yurok experimental forest too. So that would be included in the reservation. The tribe would manage those lands according to tribal land management plans. And actually with the experimental forest, the bill requires us to have a tribal land management plan. And as far as I know, in that plan, the tribe has no intention of limiting access so long as it doesn't interfere with our cultural purposes, our religious use of the land. And I think that you'll find the tribe is a much better partner in terms of providing access than our friends at Green Diamond, who own most of the Yurok Reservation, and we as tribal members don't have access to. So your second question?
Where do you get the funds to?
Oh, yes.
The Forest Service can't come up with funds, but where do you get funds
Yeah.
to maintain bridges, roads, access points, that type of thing?
Mm-hmm. So the tribe has access to a different set of federal grants because of its status as a federally recognized Indian tribe. And so we would pursue those grants, which are, often not available to the Forest Service, and we would hopefully receive those. In addition to that, that land, our council has made clear, is a priority to the tribe to manage. And so we would, pursue grants, we would, prioritize that, whereas the Forest Service, and this is what they've told us, the Forest Service office down in Oakland, that's where the experimental branch is situated. So we're not talking about like Six Rivers, we're not talking about, the local Forest Service. So the Oakland office is supposed to manage that land, and it is not a priority for them. And so, even if there may be grants available to them, they're not devoting resources to try to pursue those because it's not a priority.
Yeah, and I'm 100% in agreement with you that they're not managing the forest at least like we would like to see them do that. It's a little bit worrisome that they can't find the money to do that themselves, but they can find money to give to you to do it. So that's
the federal government as a whole?
Yeah, as a whole.
Yeah.
So that's interesting to me. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great. And I had a question. It's difficult to tell from this map, but the northern portion of the boundary, if I'm following Highway 101 north, I know in the past there's been issues where that boundary's applied specific to legislation. Is the boundary, as I'm looking at it here, go beyond Wilson Creek?
Oh, so you're talking about this northern boundary, just the top northern boundary?
So if you encompass the brown ancestral land and then what would be proposed under the legislation, is that northern boundary above Wilson Creek at that point?
So the legislation does not in any way change the northern boundary, only to the extent that it's adjusted to include the Yurok Experimental Forest.
Okay.
So even though you see the Aboriginal territory boundary, that's not really applicable to the lands legislation. Wilson, and I don't think Wilson Creek is. Yeah, so if it's not on the reservation now, it wouldn't be in the reservation after this because the legislation doesn't adjust this particular boundary. It only includes the experimental forest.
Okay. Very good. Amy, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public comment. The board may have some questions for you after
Excellent.
the
I'll go
public
ahead and
comment
sit
takes
here and
place.
be available. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, public comment on the presentation by Amy with the Yurok tribe. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. Amy, I do appreciate, please, if you would like, I do appreciate the Yurok Tribal Council and their willingness to be here today, and more importantly, to have Amy Cordalis present to the board. I know these are sensitive discussions for our board, and I think Supervisor Hemmingson, with his questions, really gets to the heart of a lot of those sensitivities, and it's the fee to trust issue, specific with fee simple land being transferred to trust and basic revenues out of those fee simple lands being lost, whether it's TPZ zone lands and potential for timber yield on those lands at some point in time, or annual through property tax. Those are going to continue to be sensitive issues for this board, I know, as our funds continue to restrict over time. It doesn't bode well for any of us to have those funds restrict over time, because I know the county does offer a lot of services to the Oregon border all the way down to your northern boundaries in Del Norte County. But nevertheless, we want to continue to work with the Yurok tribe and have open, transparent discussions specific to this, so there's no surprises moving down the road. And we do want the tribal council to be aware of that. And more importantly, the actions by just you coming here today and being willing and open enough to make a presentation, and the discussions that your council has had, not only in the 2x2s through the county, but in addition, the conversations that we've had here in the last 2 years now with presentations and joint meetings of the board and council, have really helped to open that door and have transparent conversations. So not only the board and our staff are aware, but the community is aware of the steps that are being asked. It makes it a little simpler to get to that point when the Yurok tribe comes to the board and asks for a letter of support for legislation that is yet pending, and we don't know if it's going to be picked up yet, but that helps us gain the traction we need with community members that might be on the fence on this issue. And it's really appreciated, and we, more importantly, thank the tribal council and our 2 council members that are here today, Councilmember Jensaw, Councilmember Matz. Thank you very much for your attendance, and more importantly, letting Amy bring to us the request.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. All right.
Is there any action?
Um,
Mr. Chairman, is there any action to take on this?
I don't believe so at this time. It's just for discussion. But if you would like to take action, Supervisor, or...
Well, I guess there's some more questions that kind of beg to be asked here.
Okay.
I know that a grant, excuse me, Amy, if you wouldn't mind coming up. I know a grant paved part of Bald Hills Road. I know that. That was a grant that was available only to the tribe, not to Del Norte County. So I'm going to presume there's a bucket there somewhere that you can finish that work and additional work, which citizens of Del Norte and any other area can drive over. I mean, you're not putting a toll road on there, are you?
No.
No. All right. So that would be another thing. And again, to offer any kind of support, I would like to know if this actually is legislation. It's not pending. We have 6469, which is expired from the previous Congress. Will this happen soon, where you'll actually have a number, and then we can address that at that point? And if so, will you let us know?
So Congressman Huffman has asked us to reach out to the various stakeholders to secure letters of support for the legislative proposal. So that's why we're here today asking for a letter of support now. I wish that I had a crystal ball, and I wish I knew enough about what is going on in Congressman Hoffman's mind to tell you with certainty when he would reintroduce the bill. We continue to work very closely with his staff. We continue to work with others to try to secure more support for the legislation, but I can't say with certainty when the bill would be introduced. But again, it's common practice to submit a letter of support for a proposal, a legislative proposal. So that's what we're asking for here.
So we're going to wait for that to happen before this board can act in any kind of support or opposition or whatever. I think that I would like to know that if you're asking for support for HR 6469, that there actually is legislation. So when Congressman Huffman lets you know that there is a number attached to this, and we can move forward.
Well, I think it would suffice for the county to provide a draft letter of support for that HR bill, because that is basically the same terms as what would be reintroduced. And so if it's the county's preference that you take that approach and just say we support HR, then that would be an option. And I have provided a draft letter to your staff for the board's consideration.
Mr. Chairman, do we have consensus to put that on our upcoming agenda?
What's the timing on this?
As soon as possible.
No, not necessarily on the letter, but I think Supervisor Gitlin asked, and I'm not sure I received clarity on, what's the timing on this from Congressman Huffman's standpoint, or is he just wanting a letter in the cachet when things moved forward?
I think that he wants a letter to move forward. And so if we could get a letter, as soon as possible, we've been talking with the county about it for some time now. And so if there's a way to get it today, that was what we were hoping for.
I don't think we could take action on it today.
Okay.
This opens up the discussion for it, and as Supervisor Gitlin requested, we could put it for action on our upcoming agenda
Excellent.
if we have consensus to do that today.
Okay,
And so I would ask at this time, do we have consensus to put a letter of support on our next agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, whoa.
Can't hear you.
Sorry.
I could reopen it for public comment, and you could approach the dais and make public comment at this time.
She's a council member.
Oh.
Yeah, but.
Oh, my apologies. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Go
can
ahead.
you have them come forward and introduce themselves?
Sure.
Because I've only worked with Councilman Matz
Okay.
and Jensaw in
Would you
in
guys
the
like to
past.
come forward?
I'd like to recognize them if possible.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Did she? Okay, go ahead.
Once again, Vice Chairman Jensaw, and the question was asked about Ball Hills and, who it pertains to, and a lot of things that the Yurok tribe do, a lot of things, don't just, benefit the Yurok tribe, it benefits everybody. The river, fighting with the river, I mean, for our salmon, that's our way of life, but it's a livelihood for a lot of, citizens in Del Norte County and Humboldt County and, and our public safety. We support, the county too, in that, and take care of, non-members. So I just like to say that, and a lot of things that we do, it's not just the Yurok tribe. We are the Yurok tribe. We're going to take care of our, our membership and, and our matters with, our sovereignty and, but within that, we just want to let it know, and it takes care of people in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, my apologies for not recognizing you sooner.
I just wanted to be recognized that we have two other council members that are here too. I'm from the Pequon District. I lived on the reservation all my life, and I hope you support our lands legislation. So.
Can you please introduce your name for the record?
Oh, Mindy Nat, council member for the Pequon District.
Good afternoon.
Brian Ray with the Recwa District. I just want to thank you guys for your consideration and supporting our land legislation.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time. Thank you, councilmen and councilwomen, for showing up today and expressing your interest. As through consensus you heard here today, that we'll have this letter of support for action at our next meeting in June. So we look forward to seeing you again if you do have the time to revisit the seat. Councilman Matz, it's always a pleasure.
Yes, the experimental forest actually goes from Woodland Villa south to Hunter Creek Road. There's a small section of it there. And that's always been in Forest Service. It's never been in county, so you've never gotten a dime off of it. Nobody has since Forest Service abandoned it quite a few years ago. It's considered experimental forest. People come up, scientists come up, they go out there and they walk around wondering what to do with it. And eventually they came around to where some of our people went down and talked to them down there, and they pretty much just said that if we can come up with the funding, that we can basically manage it. But we can't log it, which we don't want to log it, but if there's any down trees, we're allowed to have them and do with it as we need for cultural purposes, but we're not going to go in there and log the thing. And so there's no loss to the county, if anything at all. If we can get in there and start managing it, we can come up with some kind of a tourist draw to bring people into the county to be able to go in there and look at it, which would bring money into the county instead of driving right on by and going north or south. All right?
Thank you, Councilman.
Just one quick question. There's
Supervisor Gitlin.
kind of a secret there. There's an old car. You know where I'm talking about, Ms. Councilmember Matz, a 1930s truck. They're buried there right on Bald Hills Road. And I tell you, it's got to be worth something. It's been sitting there probably for longer than you and I have been alive together, so I just want to make sure everybody knows where it is.
It's
You know
still
what?
there, and that's on National Park property. Now.
Very good. Thank you again for your time. We appreciate you coming. Public comment was closed, but certainly, if you would like to make a comment, I could reopen public comment. Please, could you approach the dais? Thank you.
This is the first I've heard of the land legislation.
Could you introduce your name to the
My
record?
name is Gloria Carone, and
Nice to meet you, Gloria.
I'm just a very simple, humble citizen of Crescent City with a very, very profound appreciation and respect for our natural resources. And I also happen to have a master's degree in anthropology. And I thoroughly support and am very inspired by their efforts. And I support them.
Thank you, Gloria.
Support it.
Very good. All right. Any further public comment? Thank you. We appreciate your time again, Council. Thank you, Amy, for your presentation. Also, at this time, I have a great audience to the right of me, in this case, the Tolowadini Nation. Appreciate you seeing you here today. Sorry we didn't have a presentation for you here because this has been a long time since we've all been together, but lots of tribal council here today. Chairman Baumlin, I don't know if you would like to take the opportunity at this time to introduce some of your council people. I would be willing to if you had a few minutes and be willing to introduce some of your council people here today that have accompanied you. Please.
Good afternoon. Lauren Metlashne Bauman, Tribal Chair for Tolowadini Nation. And we also have other council here today. Did you want to have them come up individually?
It's up to you. How I would love for them to come up if they had a
public
second.
presentation, so I guess I'll let them sit over there.
Okay.
So if you'd raise your hand, Ms. Scott Sullivan, Secretary of the Council. We have Denise Paget. She's the Vice Chair. And we have Leanne McCullum, who is Council. And then we have Marvin Richards, who's a council member as well. So.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you being here today. Thanks for paying attention.
You're welcome.
All right. So our last agenda item, which is not an agenda item, but it's board reports. We're going to, oh, geez, treasurer's report. What? Barbara?
Barbara's been here, a trooper the whole time.
Barbara, you're a saint for sitting through this.
Very interesting.
I totally missed you. You were item number 6 on here. Thank you, Lori, for working with me on that. And this is our treasury report.
Yes,
Barbara
thank you
Lopez.
very much. Okay, so we're a little behind schedule just because you have had such a busy agenda the last few sessions. So this is my treasurer's report for quarter ending March 31st, 2017. Closing out the portfolio for March 31st, we ended at $47,776,363. Of that, about 20% was our local agency investment fund, our liquid account, at about $10,456,585, which is right where I'd like to be for our liquid account. Our Cal Trust Fund is still holding steady at $6 million. Our mitigation fund is again holding steady at about $2.5 million. We have CDs totaling $7.6 million. And we also have government agency bonds at about 44% of the portfolio with $21 million roughly. This quarter was pretty negative in our cash flow, so the money that was spent to purchase securities and CDs were used with Cal Trust funds that I withdrew from our last quarter. And rates at the time that this was prepared were holding steady, not so much right now. We're a little bit lower than what I'll present in one of my next slides. But my main focus is always to keep that new purchases at a 5-year term, non-callable if possible, just to keep my laddered portfolio nice and clean and just keep rolling things into 5-year terms as things get called or matured.
Our investment earnings were quite high this last quarter at $166,130. Again, hoping to keep that trend moving as long as our rates stay at a nice 2% even level. And the current rates, but those were as of March. CDs are kind of the sweet spot right now. I find we're getting the best yield out of CDs, although I'm pretty much buying out of the CD market right now. I don't have a lot of things left to purchase that are the higher yield CDs. So when I do see one that I don't already have, I'll pick that up right away. So a 5-year CD is, I can get 2.3 to 2.4% still, even in this this month. But the agencies, the bullets and the callables, the 5 years, are pretty, they're a little bit lower. They're more in a 4-year range right now, so I can't really find a bullet for over 2%. But when I do, I'll grab it. And LAIF is picking up again. I'm happy to see that that's a nice yield for LAIF. Just a couple years ago, it was about 0.25%, so it's nice to see that increase. Purchases for this quarter, we did some CDs, a couple securities. We did have a couple called items, which I flipped over into some 5-year no-call government agencies at a nice, a little bit higher 2% yield. And then I was able to flip some CDs, which I kind of like to do. We have a great broker that will call when there's a good flip or swap, we call it, to gain some more yield, since that's sort of where the yield is right now. And just as a side note, the CDs I always purchase at $245,000, and government agencies I try to do $1 million. Unless it's a really good one, I might buy $2 million. It just depends what kind of or cash we have on hand. But those are usually the numbers that I always use, just to keep things nice and even. And our cash flow for the quarter, as you can see, January, February, March were negative. Projections for February actually came in less of a negative cash flow, which is always good. But our projected cash flow, April's always a good month with property taxes, but then we're starting to get into the spring and summer months, which we'll see negative cash flow. So I don't anticipate being able to purchase too much, since LAIF is right at that 10 million mark, which is where I like to see our local liquid account at. I don't want to deplete that, especially going into the summer months. We always have pretty negative cash flow. So at this point, my activity is just going to be purchasing things as things roll or mature, not necessarily buying into anything brand new and depleting some of our cash reserves. And with that, that is my treasurer's report. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Barbara? Supervisor Hemmingson.
And I guess it's just an observation here. It doesn't seem like we've run that many negative cash flow months in a row. Is that pretty common? It seems like we were running some positive cash flows there for a while, and we were all surprised about that.
I know. Luckily,
but this is not surprising.
It isn't. This is, over the last few years, May, June, July, and August are always going to be negative.
Yeah.
But if I'm not mistaken, the previous quarter we had some positive cash flow.
Right.
So just kind of gets spent when, it just takes a few months to spend.
I guess that's what caught my attention when I was going over the packet.
Yeah, lots of negatives.
A lot of negative cash flow stuff, and then of course April, was positive.
Right. And with the school district attending more of our meetings, we're getting a better handle on that cash flow situation.
And they're going to be spending some of the general or the GEO bond money, I believe, this summer. So I'm going to keep CalTrust sort of where it's at. I'll keep a handle on that fund and maybe have to move some money out into our liquid account to help pay for some expenses. But
great.
Okay, thank you so much.
Go ahead and open it up for public comment.
Oh.
Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Thank you again, Barbara,
Thank you
for
very
the
much.
discussion and presentation. And at this time, we're going to go ahead and move forward with board reports. Supervisor Cowan, let's go ahead and get this kicked off.
Okay, so had a IGRC meeting. There was representatives from the city, the harbor, RHS, parks, and tri-counties. These are quarterly meetings. was unfortunate there wasn't so many people. It would have been nicer to have a bigger crowd. Sorry about that. But I think it's a really important meeting that we make sure that we have all parties coming to the table so we can talk about what's going on in our county. And attended the town hall meeting that was put on by Solid Waste, the Solid Waste Authority. There was a really good turnout there. The problem or the obstacle there is everyone who's turning out are the ones who are doing a great job at recycling, and our issues is the ones that are having a problem with the recycling. We're working on trying to find ways to clean our recycling stream. But we've got some good input at that meeting. Attended the meeting with Senator McGuire's aide, Rob Christensen, with the ad hoc group for No Place Like Home. That's the initiative that was passed last June for funding with the homeless and different things that are going on with that. There was a lot of questions asked and answered, and some more that were later answered, and we'll be having another one with the senator probably in the next week or two. I did some follow-up with both Dominic and Heidi on some constituents' concerns that have been brought to my attention. We've been out in the field and have done some follow-up on that. Last week was all about the CSAC legislative conference. There was some great workshops throughout the conference and even better conversations outside of the rooms that were going on, finding out what's going on in other counties. I find it really informative to talk to the other counties and the other supervisors and find that they're having a lot of the same issues, and I like to hear how they're handling them. As Chair Howard has referenced, we spent a lot of time outside those doors, walking literally everywhere all over Sacramento, and had a lot of really good meetings. We met with Senator McGuire, discussing many issues that are affecting our county, including the homeless. That's one of his big things, as well as last chance grade. We had just found out probably an hour prior about that the $5 million had gotten passed from CTC, and it was a good win. It was a really big win for our county. That money going forward, it's the first steps I've seen that have really are showing the effort for the bypass. We met with Paul over at Assemblyman Wood's office to discuss the Wild and Scenic Rivers bill, and tried diligently to meet with Laura Friedman, who's the author of AB 975, which is the California Wild and Scenic Rivers. We found it really interesting. This is a lady from my hometown, or close to, in Glendale, California, where there are no rivers. So couldn't get in with her. We did spend some time with Assemblyman Wood discussing various issues as well. We talked and met with the state director of Caltrans, Malcolm Doherty. I got to meet him when we walked the grade with him. We spent about 5 hours with him on the grade when all this kind of came to head, and he told us that day that he was going to make and take steps and move forward, and they have. And that $5 million was a big thing. So we got to spend some time with him and talk about that and how things will proceed, as well as we talked a lot about SB 1, because that's going to be beneficial to us as well. We met with the Assistant Director of State Parks, went looking for Federal Highways Paul, but he was still out of town. I believe he was still in San Diego. I attended the Women's Leadership Forum breakfast. It was really nice to see that group of women, a very large group of women across California that are working hard to benefit, the counties, to make changes in our counties. I got to meet with Karen Lang, who's our legislative analyst in Sacramento. Great conversations with her, really liked her. I look forward to working with her. She's a good asset to our team. By chance, also, when I was in Sacramento, Building Healthy Communities was there, so I took the opportunity to spend some time with Rachel and meet with her and what they got to, what they learned when, the things they saw when they were in Sacramento, and kind of get an update on all their meetings and to see what they're going to bring back to our county. It was a very busy 2 days, but very productive 2 days. We got a lot done. After I left SAC, I drove to to Santa Barbara to spend a couple of well-needed days with my daughter. Just got home last night, but that was really good. I'm going to go on something else a little bit different now. As many of you know, I was served with a recall notice at the last meeting. And even though I respect the right for that, I'm very disappointed that Mr. Gitlin here is spearheading this whole, so you're not, are you then against the recall?
Are you giving a report or are you making an accusation?
I'm just asking a question. Are you against the
I have
recall?
absolutely no connection
Okay.
to any of these efforts.
Well,
And
it's good to know
If this
that-
is, if you're asking me a question, then it entails that I give you an answer. I have nothing to do with this,
Okay.
Supervisor Cowan.
So-
I don't know why you would use the
I've been
valuable
told-
time to bring it to the attention
I've been
of
told
the
that
public.
Mr.
You've been told
Gitlin
that.
is
You've been told that.
spearheading this,
Okay.
and I'm glad to hear he's against this, because I think it's really important that people of Del Norte County know that this recall is going to cost us about $30,000 out of our general fund, that we're really having a hard time trying to, navigate and do our budget. I want to talk about some of the things that I'm doing right now. I'm working a lot with the hospital through BHC and the Healthcare Initiative. One of the things recently is we put together the hospital and the college. We're trying to get the RN program back. It's huge. The other thing, the hospital is working with mental health, trying to get our stabilization unit for our mentally ill, which will be a big win when that happens. I sit on the healthcare district 2x2. We're also, staying focused on keeping the hospital focused on their cost. We know we have high cost in the emergency room, and keeping the pressure on the hospital to work on that as well. Spending a lot of times on Barrow Boys Ranch, making sure that we can do everything we can to save it if there's a possibility of doing that, and if not, going forward. Solid waste, as I spoke, a lot of things with the recycling and making sure that we clean up our recycling stream. I sit on Congressman Huffman's stakeholders group with Last Chance Grade. It is a huge, huge priority for me. Just like I said, we made that connection in Sacramento. We were there last week, just staying in front of the director, in front of our congressman, in front of our senator, making sure that Last Chance Grade is a priority for them as well. Working a lot with Senator McGuire on homeless, a lot. These are just a few of some of the things I'm doing, and I need to say that out loud, because I am working really, really hard for this county and to try to make it a better place, or even better than it already is. And, the recall was very disappointing, because other people are saying differently. So if you have any questions about what I'm doing, I always encourage people to call or email, and I'll let you know. Thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Cowan. Supervisor Berkowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back in 2001, with the acquisition of the Mill Creek property and its loss of a major amount of property taxes for our area, the board eventually came up with a policy of no net loss. This policy said that the board would oppose any policy that would result in a loss of property tax. Today, 16 years later, I believe that this blanket policy is in need of discussion and possible revision in light of the changes that have taken place in this county. I don't believe that the no net loss policy took into account the hundreds of thousands of dollars that our Native American tribes have contributed to our area in direct employment and their contributions to local nonprofit organizations. These things were not considered when the Mill Creek acquisition created our current policy, and therefore I believe that it's time that we revisited this current policy and see if we want to make any modifications to the current policy. So at this time, I'm asking for consensus to have this policy brought before the board at the next meeting for discussion and possible action. Do we have consensus for a discussion and possible revision of the no net loss policy?
And not for me, for the next meeting.
Of course, for the next meeting.
Not for, I'm saying I would not have it on the agenda for the next meeting. But
Do you
we
have
would-
an agenda, a time when you'd like to have it?
We should, and I'll visit with CEO Serena and Kylie specifically on that next meeting agenda items, as I don't have a crystal ball, can't see in advance. But I'm not necessarily agreeing at this time either that a no-net policy review is appropriate at this time.
Well, let's see if we kind of have a consensus that we should have a discussion.
Supervisor Cowan.
I'm open for any discussions on, policies and stuff, but I just think with budget and stuff coming up, I think that's why you're pushing from June.
Correct.
Maybe at a later date. I mean, I'm always willing to have the discussion. I don't know about
Thank
action,
you.
but to discuss it.
Supervisor Gillen.
It's always appropriate to discuss things, whether it's at this upcoming meeting or some future meeting. When we review things, and again, I appreciate the fact that during these board reports, we have these questions asked, that I would support discussing any issue which is going to be to the benefit of Del Norte County. Now, if the no-let loss policy is failing to address needs where we are receiving services but are not getting the actual tax revenues, 6 of one, half dozen of another, as long as we're getting these services, that is what concerns me. I'd like to have that discussion. So, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your putting it on at a meeting convenient to our schedule in the immediate future.
Thank you.
Discussion would be great. I don't know that I want to go to the action part at this point.
Yep.
So,
And that's the same for me. So,
Right. Mr.
Supervisor
Chairman, I'd like to
Berkowitz-
continue with my presentation.
I certainly, but we'll conclude, and CEO Serena, we'll discuss this, and Kylie at a future agenda, and try to find a time in the near future to have that discussion. Please continue, Supervisor
you.
Berkowitz.
Well, while I was at CSAC last week, I had a chance to talk one-on-one with Melanie Rail. She's the Deputy State Director for U.S. Senator Camilla Harris. We discussed the possibility of funding for Last Chance Grade, the crab and salmon fishing emergencies for the California coast. On the state level, I had a conversation with Karen Lance, our state lobbyist on issues. We talked about the policy of getting an amendment to a current bill in the legislature that would get counties who only have one hospital in their county a mandate so that they post their customary and ordinary charges in their lobby. Brianne Fawley from the Tolowa Nation asked to meet with me and discuss items of mutual interest, which we did. And yesterday, LAFCO met. We were informed that litigation with the Birch Ocean View Water District had been successfully concluded, and they found in favor of LAFCO. And for those of you interested in going, there is a Klamath Chamber of Commerce mixer at 4 p.m. today in the Forest Cafe in Klamath.
Thank you, Supervisor Berkowitz. Supervisor Gillen.
Wow, these reports are really getting quite informative. I just want to say on a personal note, when a colleague makes a public accusation, which is on tape, it's very distressing. I appreciate someone having an opinion, but based on what some people say, and there are all kinds of rumor mongers around, I'm disappointed in Supervisor Cowan making that kind of an allegation here. Now, having said that, I'm now going to refer to what I did this past 2 weeks, which are considerable and I'm very proud of. Now, the day after our meeting, which was May 9th, our Redwood Coast Transit Authority met, and as we reported earlier, we learned we have a $212,000 reserve. It's built up over many years, and some of those funds will now need to be supplemented for a proposed deficit that is somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000 in the next fiscal period due to the cutback in federal transit funding. So our authority voted to protect the subsidized Greyhound service to Arcata while continuing to offer good service to Arcata with our Redwood Transit bus service. So we'll continue to have that funding available. Anyway, the net subtraction of this $212,000 is going to be about $62,000. We still have a reserve. That's good news. Many agencies don't have that luxury, and we'll have to find a way to use those funds wisely for perhaps a rainy day. As was mentioned, our Del Norte Local Transportation met Wednesday, and the commission voted to fund the Howe Drive coastal access in the city to the tune of $125,000. You may be noticing some changes going on at the Jed Smith Square. As I mentioned to you before, that's been a source of well, what can I say, social problems that affect our economy today. They now have a security officer who will walk around the center and make sure those people who are there for no business other than to panhandle and beg will be escorted off the property. It is private property. I'm very happy to say, and I'm very pleased with the new ownership management team, in fact, that they're really making good changes to this this property. Kirkland Landscaping is now doing the work on that. It's a big improvement, and I hope to see these things continuing. As mentioned, I also attended the legislative conference, our semi-annual meeting, and during that time we attended the Coastal Counties Committee, and we announced, had an opportunity to thank the California Coastal Commission, which is not something I normally do, and acknowledge their work, but because of a complaint I registered in December, at the coastal counties about graffiti on our rocks at Preston Rock, and there was no plan to remove this. There was no approved Coastal Commission plan to remove graffiti. One was quickly developed thanks to Supervisor Groom from San Mateo, who was also a coastal commissioner. So during that period, contact was made with our CDD department, and I'm really pleased to say they all acted as a great team. And as of about a week ago, the graffiti has been removed from iconic Preston Rock. So I'm very pleased to tell you that took place. And it's nice to see when you make a comment like that, that there is immediate action. It gives me a lot of hope. And I want to thank our CDD Director, Heidi Kunstall, Sheriff Apperson, who oversees the search and rescue team, which acted out of its normal mission. And of course, Sergeant Ed Fleshman, who runs Search and Rescue, raised a little money for them, but they did the work and the graffiti is gone. I want to talk a little bit about one of the meetings we took place at the legislative conference, and this involves SB 1. And this is $5.2 billion of monies that's going to go across the state. And I'm really, it hurts me to say the benefit to Del Norte County is almost negligible. We will receive approximately $1.2 million, but we're going to pay a steep price for that. In our county, the highest price portion of the state for gas prices, which you already know are high here. I think $3.23 a gallon is what I saw on the Chevron station this morning. It will rise another 12 cents a gallon effective November 1st for gasoline. That's in addition to what it already is, and another 19 cents a gallon for diesel. And when you go to register your vehicles, depending upon the year of the car, the vehicle you have, if it's an older car, it's a minimum $65 more than the existing model that we have already, and will go as high as $175 if you have an expensive car. This clearly is not fair to rural counties, and is not fair, especially in view of the fact that we have just across the border gas that's 65 cents a gallon less. And 3 out of every 4 of you who are listening to this tape now, or in fact in this audience, do in fact buy your gas in either the tribal entity or up in Brookings. Now, I asked those in question at the state if there is an exemption for border counties, and we have several border counties that you can drive a short distance, again, from Blythe, California, go right over to Quartzsite, right over the border there, and save a considerable amount of money just buying your gas. And people aren't, they're aware of this. Money is tight. So unfortunately, the state did not handle this well in terms of the benefit. Yes, we need our roads repaired, but it's at the expense of poor counties, rural counties. And again, the 405 and the 710 and all those freeways down in Southern California, Sacramento, Fresno. Yes, we have great need to repair our roads, but this one's going to hurt. And I bring that to everyone's attention because already so many people go to Brookings to buy their fuel. This will only hurt the 6 service stations that are here operating as businesses right now. Also, this past Saturday, I joined volunteers from Just Serve and the Interfaith Council in helping clean up the cemetery sites. This is in preparation for next week's Memorial Day services at the cemetery. very pleased to say there were many Take a Bite Out of Life volunteers participating in this annual preparation, and that pays homage to those who preceded us. We all go the same journey, unfortunately, and one day who knows who's going to be there. But it's nice to know that there are members in our community who keep those grave sites neat and clear. Yesterday, as mentioned by Supervisor Berkowitz, our local agency formation commission met and approved a $90,000 budget. The commission also voted to retain the services of Plan West Partners for its 7th year. Plan West has been an excellent steward of allocating these funds. The budget has remained virtually unchanged, and I think mostly it's split between the city and the county, about $39,000, $40,000 each, and somewhere in that area with some other expenses coming in. Our council also announced that LAFCO has in fact prevailed on a lawsuit involving the Birch Ocean View Homeowners Community Service District and involving the Elk Valley Rancherias project, which is accessing city water through a process called water wheeling, and that project hopefully will move forward. And that is my report.
Thank you, Supervisor. Just a quick point of clarification, just with Supervisor Gitlin's report specific to SB 51, SB 1, the dollars coming to Del Norte County, I believe, are substantially higher than what you've reported. And Jay, if you could, I can't remember the exact number, but I believe it's $4 million.
Well, the annual is about 1.4 based on what
The annual,
CSAC
correct.
last sent out.
Yep. Okay. I just wanted to put that in the record for clarity. I appreciate it. Thank you. Supervisor.
Yes, thank you. As was mentioned, I did have a local transportation commission meeting. I won't go into that since that's already been gone through. Had a future facilities meeting, which we looked at possible new site for the child support services. We got a little more work to do on that, in my opinion. The No Place Like Home discussion, I was in Senator McGuire's office in Eureka for that discussion, as Supervisor Cowan talked about earlier. I was on my way to a whale working group which addresses the whale entanglements, specifically to Dungeness crab gear. We're moving right along with that. Had some great presentations. I was down there for a couple of days. It's not county funded or an operation that the county does, but it's something that I work on personally. But it did take some time out of my week. And really didn't have a whole lot more going on. But I did want to mention that we have got a new community input tool for traffic hazards or circumstances or things that come up that you can report online, and then hopefully Caltrans or whoever those people that would do something with it can put together the information, the data, and make something out of it. I went onto the site to take a look at it. There's already a few posts put in there, so you can add to that. I would give you the address, but it's fairly long, and you can look it up online or get a hold of Tamara Layton at 465-3878. There's also a proposed change in regulation for recreational fishing, which is supposedly supposed to automatically conform to federal regulations. I haven't had a chance to check into that yet. I just got noticed yesterday, and while I was in Eureka at Senator McGuire's office, I did get a chance to talk to Tom Westlow on other fishing issues, which it's nice to get a hold of him. He is Senator McGuire's fishing guy, so he knows all the information. So I am going to get a hold of him about that, and that's it for me.
Thank you, and also Supervisor Hamilton, thank you for bringing up the community input tool. I know a lot of those discussions originally arose out of a great deal of concern with the corridor specific to Highway 199 and Elk Valley Crossroads, where the Haben family had lost your mom several years ago, and that input tool specifically will really help us, the community, capture those near misses that we all see that could have come close to either causing a fatality or causing significant bodily harm or damage to personal property that go unreported with either the CHP or Caltrans. And that's data, statistical data, that could really help drive Caltrans in funding of projects in areas of great concern to us. And that's just one specific area. I know Tolowadini Nation, since they're here today, they have Highway 101 running through their tribal boundaries. And there has been many, many fatalities that have occurred within those boundaries on Highway 101 over the last several years. And they've been able to implement, fortunately through federal funding, highway safety improvement projects that have reduced and provided caution to those areas in hopes that those fatalities will cease. But that's how projects work. It's through community collaboration, and more importantly, through community input. And I really appreciate you bringing it up. I know it's on the front page of the paper today, and we really hope to get the community's involvement where those near-miss areas on our state highway system are occurring, so we could drive discussion with Caltrans for the appropriate funding, whether it's on tribal lands or whether it's on county fee lands. Attended the Children and Families Commission meeting where a great deal of discussion was had about the future of the Wonder Bus and its aging. We're going to have a special meeting to discuss that here in the near future. Also attended the North Coast Unified Air Quality District Management meeting. In this case, one of the areas to highlight is the appointment of Eli Nafa as a hearing board member for future meetings. As Supervisor Cowan discussed, we attended the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority special meeting to discuss the trash can collection sizes, which is open for considerable debate right now, but issues and resolution around those need to be found. Also attended a meeting around food insecurity that's developed out of the Literacy Symposium. Met with Dr. Anna Johnson over teleconference with other folks from our Building Healthy Communities team in order to really find those linkages between food insecurity and our youth and their ability to learn and those outcomes before they hit a pre-K environment, and their ability to even be ready for a kindergarten environment where their brains can learn. And as many of us know anecdotally, and probably have now been found in research papers, that if a child's hungry when he comes to school, he's just not going to be able to learn or concentrate. And it morphs into all kinds of other behaviors that not just affect that specific child and his ability to learn, but also the ability of the teacher to have a good conversation and learning opportunities within those classroom settings. So hopefully, working with Dr. Anna Johnson in the future, we could really begin to tie in those discussions that the community is having with literacy, and our goals with everyone will read by grade 3 by 2023. Also attended agenda review, and in addition, as folks here have mentioned, attended the CSAC legislative conference and took many opportunities to get out not only to our legislative representatives like Senator McGuire and Assemblyman Wood, but also to reach out as Supervisor Cowan to those issues that affect Del Norte County through legislatures, legislative members like Assemblyman Friedman with AB 975. We found it just curious as all heck that even though we made the request through our representatives, that her door remained locked through the entire time we were in the state capitol, and no outreach was even made to our representatives to have a meeting so we could discuss issues that affect our backyard and don't necessarily affect hers. And it was really bothersome, and I'm glad Supervisor Cowan was able to accompany me on those discussions. And in addition, as Supervisor Cowan mentioned, and my apologies in advance for running you all around the state capitol, and in addition around the streets of Sacramento to our various offices, whether it's state parks, whether it's Department of Fish and Wildlife, whether it's Caltrans, you're a real trooper. I think those opportunities as are available when we all visit Sacramento, we need to take the opportunity to meet with those directors and let them know we're here and let them know about our priority issues. It's extremely important to the future of what we're doing, and as Supervisor Cowan reflected on our conversation with Director Malcolm Doherty, we know for a fact leaving that room that his eyes on the ball when it comes to last chance grade. We also attempted outreach with Paul Schneider with FHWA, who has been on site with last chance grade, and his also superiors, Matt Schmidt and Vince Menano, with Federal Highways, who are representatives in the state of California that are helping to drive this process. As was related by Jamie Mattioli, those folks are extremely important to our forward progress as it comes to funding of the alternative route. Before we actually entered the meeting today, Paul actually reached out today, and they'll approach Supervisor Cowan on getting together on that discussion here, hopefully this afternoon. Also attended Resource Conservation District special meeting to look at fixes for Morrison Creek. In this case, as some folks may or may not be aware, annually we've been experiencing significant flooding on Fred Haight Drive at the Morrison Creek intersection with Fred Haight Drive. Whether it's a small storm or a big storm, the water is not only topping the road and causing flooding of Fred Haight Drive, it's also flooding the houses, and has even caused residents to put their houses up for sale. A lot of this issue has been caused by a great deal of sediment load that has come down the system and aggraded it to a point where the culverts, even though the county clears those culverts out immediately, they'll fill up the next day. And we really need to work on not only short-term but long-term solutions. In this case, the discussions were had and convened by the Smith River Alliance, who has secured a grant from the California Coastal Commission to take a look at these issues and not only work with landowners, but work with cooperating agencies such as NOAA, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and in addition the Coastal Commission, to see where we might have some flexibility to get a short-term fix and do some removal of gravels hopefully by this summer. And we're going to all work collectively on the permitting situation to work not only downstream but upstream, because with the degraded condition of Morrison Creek, there is literally no habitat for salmon there in the summer because there's no water in the system. The creek is literally degraded anywhere from 3.5 to 4 feet and now tops its bank and provides no habitat for the fishery. So with that, that concludes our report. We really appreciate everybody sticking around today and really appreciate the presence of the Tolowadini Nation council members at our meeting. We look forward to seeing you again in the future. Everybody have a great day.